Good evening. Would like to reconvene to public session at 7:05 p.m. And if we would stand and salute the flag, followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated.
Amen.
Okay, would like to amend the agenda and add 12F on personnel, which is administrative. Do I have a first on that?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Nichols. Mrs. Isler, roll call vote. Mr. Nichols?
Approved.
Mrs. Isler?
Approved.
And Mrs. Pugh?
Approved.
So approved. Okay, as amended, recommend approving tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Nichols, second Mrs. Pugh, roll call vote. Mr. Nichols?
Approved.
Mrs. Pugh?
Approved.
And Mrs. Isler?
Approved.
So approved. Recommend the approval of the minutes of the Board of Education regular meeting of March 20th, 2024. First, Mrs. Pugh.
Second.
Second, Mr. Nichols. Roll call vote. Mrs. Pugh.
Approved.
Mr. Nichols.
Approved.
And Mrs. Isler.
Abstain.
Abstain. So I approve. Okay, recognition of guests. Dr. Larimore. You would.
Good evening, everybody. Tonight we have the pleasure of being joined by our elementary school students and parents. If I could get the Laurel Elementary School representatives, administration, and Mr. Michael Sneed, please come to the front. The reason for the Laurel Elementary School students being here this evening is to celebrate the Bulldog Buddies Mentoring Program, in which our older Laurel Elementary School students mentor our younger Laurel Elementary School students. So,
So good evening, everyone. Thank you on behalf of LES for allowing us to recognize our amazing students tonight. This started back in the very beginning of the year. Mr. Steve and I were having a conversation with one of our younger Bulldogs, and one of our sixth graders came by and said to him, "Hey man, you could do it. You can turn your day around. It's going to be a great day." Gave him a handshake and went on his way. So I think that ignited a spark with Mr. Sneed and I, and he said, why don't we use the best resources we have in our building, our sixth grade role models. So we want to recognize them for being awesome. We also want to recognize our mentees for being part of this. They've learned so much from the older students. They've made great relationships with them. It's just been awesome. Mr. Steve wants to say something quickly. Are you good? Okay. Yes. Yep. Yes. All right, so, and one thing I have to say, our mentors meet with our mentees every morning before breakfast, talk with them, check in with them during the day. We're planning a lunch tomorrow. We've made candy sushi together. We've done getting to know you activities, so it's been awesome. All right, so we're gonna call our mentor with their mentee. Hopefully everybody's here. So Demarion Hopkins, our mentor. Travis Leader is his mentee. Carter Bristow, mentor, and Dylan Jones, mentee. Maddox Ramirez is our mentor, and Jaleel Walters is mentee. Jermel Savage is our mentor, and Jackson Henderson is our mentee. Nico Scotton is our mentor, and Cleo Horsey, our mentee. Danica Charwan is our mentor, and Ava Taylor is our mentee. Rashad Long is our mentor, and Rashad has two mentees. He has Sincere Chandler and London Flowers. Rosalie Porto is our mentor, and Eden Dixon is our mentee. Mariah Pugh is our mentor, and Kylie Gaynor is her mentee. Janelle Downs is our mentor, and Kenley Roberts is her mentee. Honor Willard has two mentees. Honor is our mentor. Gavin Conley is her mentee, and RJ Bagwell is her mentee. Rima Fasayak is our mentor, and Lazier Horsey is her mentee. Angie Diaz is our mentor, and Jakai Thompson is our mentee. Ava Holland is our mentor. Riley Ekman is her mentee. And Angela Lopez is our mentor, and Edmund Blank is our mentee. Thank you, all of you. We're very proud of you.
Yes.
Okay, let me get the kids down in front. They're staying.
About one more round of applause for our mentors and mentees.
Okay, next we have communication from the board. Mrs. Pugh, would you like to go first?
Oh, okay. Threw that right in. Just happy that I'm hearing real good things about testing, that each building is happy with the way it's going, and even my grandchildren have been happy with the way it's going. So that's really an endorsement. So just hang in there, we're almost there, and we're waiting for those good scores to come back. And thank you to all of you.
Okay, Mr. Nichols?
I went to the ball game the other day, which was different. I didn't sweat, and I didn't exactly freeze my butt off. So, I mean, this time of the year, you never know what you're going to get. I think Forrest Gump said his mama told him, life's like a box of chocolates. So if you go to a ball game, I'd recommend be prepared. You don't know what you're going to get. So, but I was glad we won anyway. So.
Well said.
Yes. Very good. Mrs. Isler?
Good evening to everyone, and I don't have a whole lot to say this evening, except that I'm glad everybody is still putting forth your best foot, even though we've kind of come to the turn of the year. We're down at the last stretch. And so we just, asking that, we all, keep doing the great things that we're doing right up until the very end. And then you'll get to enjoy your summer, unless you're giving us some more time with the summer programs in some way. But we greatly appreciate all that everyone does. And just, want you guys to keep hanging in there just a little while longer.
Thank you. Yes, everyone, you're on the home stretch here. School will be over before you know it. And I do want to do a shout out to Mrs. Massey on Ray Lewis. That was excellent. That was pretty cool. I went, how'd they get him? That was cool. That was good. That was good. Did you get comments from parents?
We had someone on social media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was good. Very good. So, okay, let's move right along. Public participation, I have no one that has signed up this evening. So, reports, financial report. We'll go on into that.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Hey, Laura.
Hello.
Just a quick update from last month. We completed the estimated unit count. Our projected Division 1 units are 189, and our 9/30/23 actual units were 185.72. So that gives us our 98%, which is unchanged from last year's 98%. And things we have coming up, we have an extra annual report due this month, and then our October 1st report due on May 1st. Our financial position report, which is in your packets tonight for approval, is due May 1st. And then we're still waiting on any more information for our local funds audit for FY23. And then here's our snapshot of our reserve and local balances. You do see that it's below last year's, and that's because last year I made a transfer in March, and this year I made it in April. So next month you'll see it as FICA.
That's good.
I was wondering about that.
Spiking up is good.
Yes.
Any questions?
No.
Thank you.
Yes.
And here you go. Thank you. Okay, recommend the approval of the May 1st financial position report as submitted.
So moved.
First, Mrs. Pugh.
Second.
Second, Mr. Nichols. Roll call vote, Mrs. Pugh.
Approved.
Mr. Nichols.
Approved.
And Mrs. Isler.
Approved.
So approved. No unfinished business, so new business. Recommend approval of school choice as submitted.
So moved.
First, Mrs. Isler. Second, Mr. Nichols. Roll call vote, Mrs. Isler.
Approved.
Mr. Nichols.
Approved.
And Mrs. Pugh.
Approved.
So approved. Fundraisers. Recommend approval of fundraisers as a group.
So moved.
First, Mrs. Pugh. Second, Mr. Nichols. Roll call vote, Mrs. Pugh.
Approved.
Mr. Nichols.
Approved.
And Mrs. Isler.
Approved.
So approved. Recommend approval of fundraisers as submitted.
So moved.
First, Mrs. Pugh. Second, Mr. Nichols. Roll call vote, Mrs. Pugh.
Approved.
Mr. Nichols.
Approved.
And Mrs. Isler.
Approved.
So approved. Rentals. We have one rental. Recommend to approve request of David King, Do You program, to host youth football camp for children ages 12 to 17 on Saturday, June the 22nd, 2024, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Laurel Stadium. Rain date is June 29th, 2024. With request use of athletic field and concession stand. Food truck will also be on site for the event. No cost to participate. Equipment request of microphone and sound system. Certificate of liability insurance to be provided.
I recommend approval with use of facility fee waived, custodial fee waived, and constable fees applied.
Okay, facility fee waived, custodial fee waived, but constable fee applied. First by Mrs. Isler,
Second.
second by Mrs. Pugh. Roll call vote, Mrs. Isler,
Approved.
Mrs. Pugh? And Mr. Nichols?
Approved.
So approved. Professional trips, recommend approval of professional group.
So moved.
First, Mrs. Pugh. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Mrs. Isler. Roll call vote, Mrs. Pugh.
Approved.
Mrs. Isler.
Approved.
And Mr. Nichols.
Approved.
So approved. Recommend approval of professional trips as submitted.
So,
First, Mrs. Pugh. Second, Mrs. Isler. Roll call vote, Mrs. Pugh. Mrs. Isler.
Approved.
And Mr. Nichols.
Approved.
So approved. Law School District Repair and Maintenance Plan. Recommend to approve the Law School District Repair and Maintenance Plan as submitted.
So moved.
First, Mr. Nichols. Second, Mrs. Pugh. Roll call vote, Mr. Nichols.
Approved.
Mrs. Pugh.
Approved.
And Mrs. Isler.
approved.
So approved. And I have a form here that each of us is to sign. And then this will go to Daryl, correct? Okay. Okay, first reading, 2024-2025 school calendar. Recommend the first reading, the Law School District 2024-2025 school calendar as submitted and found on the district website and as found at the Law School District sites. The school calendar will be available for review by the community at the Law School District buildings and on the district website. Community input is welcome and should be directed to the superintendent of schools no later than Tuesday, May 8th, 2024. Dr. Larimore, would you like to read the whole next part?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go through this.
Do it. Right here.
G.
G, yes.
Law School District 2025 Teacher of the Year, Educational Support Staff of the Year, and Behavioral Health Professional of the Year building level nominees are 2025 Teacher of the Year building level nominees, Brian Miller, Specialist from Nelela, Nicole Summers, third grade teacher from Laurel Elementary School, Nicole Ingley, Physical Education teacher from Laurel Middle School, and Joe Winky, English and Language Arts, grade 11-12 teacher at Laurel High School. For 2025, Educational Support Staff of the Year, building level nominees are Carrie Green, paraprofessional, Nalela, Veronica Lee, Life Skills paraprofessional at Laurel Elementary School, and Sarah Jo Whaley, ML program paraprofessional at Laurel Middle School, and finally we have Nicole Dickerson, instructional life skills paraprofessional at Laurel High School. And we have two candidates, nominees for 2025 Behavioral Health Professional of the Year. Building level nominees were Crystal Ellison, Transition Specialist at Laurel High School, and Justin Young, Guidance Counselor at Laurel Middle School. The state does Behavioral Health Professional of the Year a little differently. They named them earlier, so we have to name ours earlier. So Crystal Ellison was selected as a 2025 District Behavioral Health Professional of the Year.
Yay.
Yeah. Good luck to all of our nominees.
Which will be revealed, when is it? Okay, April
28th.
April 29th.
29th. Right.
April 29th.
Okay, thank you, Lori.
And we live stream it, Mike. So there you go.
We will now.
We will now.
We'll put it in your paycheck. Okay, possible action on executive session items. Personnel attachment A, professional. Recommend to approve the personnel report with recommendations as discussed in executive session as listed in attachment A.
So moved.
First, Mrs. Pugh.
Second.
Second, Mr. Nichols. Roll call vote, Mrs. Pugh,
Approved.
Mr. Nichols,
Approved.
and Mrs. Isler.
Approved.
So approved. Personnel attachment B, support staff. Recommend to approve the personnel report with recommendations as discussed in executive session as listed in attachment B.
So moved.
Second.
First, Mrs. Isler, second, Mr. Nichols. Roll call vote, Mrs. Isler,
Approved.
Mr. Nichols,
Approved.
and Mrs. Pugh.
Approved.
So approved. Personnel attachment C, coaches. Recommend to approve the personnel report with recommendations as discussed in executive session as listed in attachment C.
So moved.
First, Mr. Nichols,
Second.
second, Mrs. Pugh. Roll call vote, Mr. Nichols,
Approved.
Mrs. Pugh,
Approved.
and Mrs. Isler.
Approved.
So approved. Personnel Attachment D, Administrator. Recommend to approve the personnel report with recommendations as listed in executive session as listed in Attachment D.
So moved.
First, Mr. Nichols.
Second.
Second, Mrs. Isler. Roll call vote, Mr. Nichols.
Approved.
Mrs. Isler.
Approved.
And Mrs. Pugh.
Approved.
So approved. Personnel Attachment E, Administrator. Recommend to approve the personnel report with recommendations as discussed in executive session as listed in Attachment E.
So moved.
First, Mrs. Isler.
Second.
Second, Mr. Nichols. Roll call vote, Mrs. Isler.
Approved.
Mr. Nichols.
Approved.
And Mrs. Pugh. So approved. Personnel Attachment F. Recommend to approve the personnel report with recommendations as discussed in executive session as listed in Attachment F.
So moved.
Second.
First, Mrs. Isler. Second, Mr. Nichols. Roll call vote, Mrs. Isler.
Approved.
Mr. Nichols.
Approved.
And Mrs. Pugh. Okay, the future agenda items, the regular board meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, May the 8th. This one is always early. May the 8th at 7 p.m. at the Laurel Middle High School cafeteria. Do I have a motion that we adjourn?
So moved.
First, Mrs. Isler.
Second.
Second, Mr. Nichols. Roll call vote, Mrs. Isler.
Approved.
Mr. Nichols.
Approved.
And Mrs. Pugh.
Approved.
So approved, so we adjourn at 7:26 p.m. And thank you very much.